Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of the Honest Hour. We've got four great agents on the program here that cover the Lower Mainland, and we're going to dive into a good half a dozen topics here. First, let's introduce the panel. We've got EJ Bukayong joining us from Richmond, Tyson Kleem joining us from the Fraser Valley, and Norm Hiller joining us from East Van. I'm out here in Burnaby, Christian B. And let's jump right into it, guys. Look, the big topic in the news in the last 3 weeks has been Indigenous land claims in the Lower Mainland. I think the viewer will be familiar with the claim in Richmond. That was a court ruling last August 2025 that ruled that there was both two titles, Aboriginal title as well as the fee simple title on certain sections, awarded it to the Musqueam Nation. And of course, that's probably going to go to the Supreme Court and be appealed by the province. Guys, what I want to do, we're not constitutional lawyers, so we don't have to talk about the legal aspects of it. But I do want to talk about the practical aspects of it and the political aspects of it. And the practical aspects, first off, is what impact is it having on the people who live there? Maybe just EJ, if I don't know how familiar you are with the numbers or what you're seeing there, but what impact has it had on the sales or the sales prices in Richmond?
Yeah, really good question. I think one of the things that it kind of first started out in Richmond over there, and there was a portion of residential, and most of it was kind of industrial. That was that first land claim, just kind of closer to the movie theaters there at the end of Five Road over there, and that was only a few different stratas, and that was probably November, and at that time we had an accepted offer on one of my listings, and that property had the buyer there was selling one of their places, had their accepted offer, and literally that same week they had that kind of came out basically during
Oh.
the subject removal period. So obviously the buyer kind of backed out just because of all the uncertainty. And those kind of two buildings or so have really kind of had a hard time because of the uncertainty about it. Um, Now with all this kind of other things that are kind of coming out and affecting more of obviously Richmond and Vancouver, and I think it's part of Burnaby as well. It's more uncertainty that's kind of coming up, and yeah, a lot of people don't know what to kind of do, and so buyers are kind of just some buyers are kind of waiting to see kind of what happens.
Mm. Norm, are people asking you about Indigenous title claims yet?
Not many. I've had a couple of clients bring it up, but I think some people would see, you know, I think some people think it's a bit of a conspiracy. Oh, they're not coming for your land. But these clients have read up quite a bit on all this, and the UN's um, what is it, DRIPA, and they
Yeah.
they told me quite a bit about it. We had quite a good conversation about it. So I think for some people it's a huge concern. Other people just shrug it off like, oh, it's not going to change. With regards to Metro Vancouver, I mean, there's 2 million people or 2 million homes that fall under this. It's not going to change. So I have had a few clients ask about it, but not all that many.
Mm. Tyson, is this something homeowners need to worry about now?
Oh, yeah, I think if you're in that territory, I think it's something you need to worry about. It's I don't know, whenever the government tells you not to worry, usually it's a time when you need to worry, right? Is that the how it kind of works? But I was just even looking up some older headlines of just seeing like the material impact of just a Cowichan claim that was happening there, like EJ. And I think we talked about this before, but like the Versante Hotel, which was like a 98 million dollar purchase. Now they pulled out of it, this Ontario-based company, and then it later sold for 50 million, this property. And there's a number of those kind of cases where you're seeing material impact. And um, yeah, so I don't know, it hasn't rolled out to the valley yet, but I think people are just kind of going, okay, are we living near a area of dispute? Is that something? And it's I don't know, man, it's going to be interesting territory that we're heading into.
Yeah, guys, I got to tell you, I find this really frustrating right now because I think there's a level of secrecy on behalf of both the
Yep.
provincial and the federal government, which is really concerning. At the provincial level, I know the media has asked the provincial government. How many land claims are there? They
Yeah.
won't tell them. They won't tell them. And we have what, 200 Indigenous groups in the province. I think there's treaties with about 10 or 20 of them. So there's about 180 that are unaccounted, not for which there are no treaties. So the question is, like, what's going on? And there's claims over, if you can believe this, there's claims over, for example, the entire city of Kamloops. If you're an owner, a resident in Kamloops, you're probably worried about this, right? And there's claims I've read in other parts, different articles give you different numbers, 85% of BC. I've read 110%. How can you claim more than what is? And I guess the answer to that is there's overlapping land claims.
Yeah. Exactly.
I just feel like we've opened up a complete can of worms here on this issue. Norm, what are you hearing from homeowners?
From homeowners, not too much. I mean, I know a lot of realtors are talking about it, and they're kind of saying, "Oh, it's not a big deal." Others are saying, "Well, no, this is a huge deal." A lot of people are saying this information's not available. Others are saying, "No, it's available. Just do a Google search." Well, I mean, I've looked. They have a little bit of a word salad, very ambiguously worded statements, but you don't actually, I haven't seen anything that's incredibly definitive. Um, Everything from the YVR airport in the past, they've given 1% of the proceeds to the First Nations, and now it's just in talks that it's going to expand to a two-tier, or two method. Um, way of paying them out. But there's nothing listed. We have no idea what that actually is. Is it going from 1% to 80%, 1% to 2%? We have no idea. I haven't seen anything that's very definitive. And I
Yeah,
find
it's
that
open
very
a
frustrating,
Pandora's
especially,
box.
sorry?
It's open a Pandora's box, really, is what it's done.
Yeah, and
It's
especially in our day and age where everything is about complete disclosure. I know in our business it is. I mean, we need to have everybody initial on the rescission amount when it changes $2.50 on a $1,000 counter offer. I mean, we need to do that or it's, you know, unethical behavior or, actions unbecoming, but the government doesn't have to disclose any of this. I find it very frustrating.
Yeah, and I think if we kind of look at it now with the actual area that's being kind of impacted, um, oh, look at this guy over here cooking down there. If you look at it from, oh, it's still cooking.
it's still
Right
hungry.
over here on the end, I think is like a little bit in the first part here for Richmond. And then that was the initial claim with those kind of two stratas. Most that was residential. There was obviously a bunch more for the industrial part. But now when you kind of look at it, it takes all of Richmond. There's all the Burnaby parts of Surrey. It's like equipment there in Vancouver all the way up. So, that's a lot of area to cover. And obviously it affects a lot more people. So it's going to be very interesting how this all kind of, this pans.
Well, and EJ, why don't you scroll down because there may be more. So which nation is this? So this is the Squamish tribe, right? Claiming this in blue. And there's probably even more.
Yeah, there's another one.
Keep scrolling down. Oh, there we go. Who's next?
That's
Scroll
the
down a bit
Sawasan.
further.
That's
This
the
is Sawa.
Sawasan band. Yeah.
Right. So, and then no, you can go back up. But I mean, this is really frustrating for homeowners. And I think what this is I think there's been in the past, and even up until the present day, governments seem to walk on eggshells around this issue. Like you can't ask any questions. And because if you ask any questions, you're a bigot or you're a racist. And that's it. And you're just not supposed to talk about it because that is the sort of predominant narrative. And I think certain streams of the media is that you just don't talk about it. You don't question this. And I just think it's just the wrong way to go about this. It's really time to have an open, honest conversation about this. I think what really bothers me is that we are supposed to make amends for things that happened 200 years ago when Napoleon was around. I mean, I think that look, it doesn't. You cannot. you can't be holding people responsible today for things that were, by all means, great injustices. But the way to remedy that is not by taking away private land from owners who have acquired it through legal means. Every one of us on this call and any of the clients we've ever worked with has acquired their property through legal means, right? They've paid their taxes to the state, to the province, to the federal government, to the provincial government, and so on. And you don't to question private property like this, I think is the worst possible thing. And I think it's a big kick in the pants to the economy because try and get a guy to buy or try and get a company to invest in, let's say, industrial land in Richmond or anywhere else where you have these kind of claims. Good luck. Good luck. How are they ever going to get a mortgage from a big lender? And a big lender is not going to come out and say, well, we're not giving you a mortgage because we don't like these land claims. They're just going to not give you the mortgage. And so, in a time when we're dealing with this chaotic White House and these ridiculous tariffs, we need a strong local economy. And the worst thing in the world that we can do to it is to question private property rights. No prosperous society has ever been built on anything less than private property rights. And it's private property rights, which are often the foundation of human rights.
Yeah.
It ain't no surprise if you look around the world where you have a lack of human rights, they often don't have property rights either. So I'm really upset about this issue, and especially because the governments have been the communication on this has been so poor, and especially the federal government. They dropped that release, by the way, that EJ just pulled up with the Musqueam. This came out just before this late in the afternoon on a Friday, just before the weekend. The media didn't have any opportunity to ask any questions of it. And I just thought, like, they should understand the political sensitivity of this right now, especially in the wake of the Richmond case. And I think you can tell it's done by bureaucrats in Ottawa that are just detached from this. And it's just the governments owe this to the people that we pay our property taxes, we pay our taxes. You got to be telling us what you're negotiating, what you're doing, right? Yeah. It's really frustrating. Tyson, what are your thoughts?
Well, even if just how it's written, it's like there's no clarity around even how like it was a 30-page agreement that they had written up with the federal government for the Musqueam thing, but it even talks about like in the language used on it that it may still affect fee simple private property. Like it's not just a crown land because the government owns all the crown land. They can choose what they do with it however they want to. Now is in the public interest. They have to make sure they have that responsibility to be in the public interest. But I think the biggest issue in this one is, yeah, Christian, you alluded to it. They rolled it out on a Friday before anybody has any chance to pay attention to it. Secondly, is I feel like the majority of people out there have no idea what this means or the implications of it because they're not thinking about this. And if something is a little too difficult to understand or to try and comprehend it, or it's too big for them to comprehend, they're just going to kind of just walk along and not really question it. And I think this is where we need to start raising some alarm bells with it, even with the fact of just like you're saying, the secrecy. So even David Evie, when he was asked by the press, said he didn't know anything about this. He was not informed. And yet he was at the signing, which is
He was at the signing ceremony sitting in the front row and
but
told the press later he didn't know what the signing ceremony was about. What is
he
going
said,
on
I
with
think
this
he said
guy?
he wasn't at the capacity of a premier. He was there on a different as a different representative kind of thing. But it's just smoke and mirrors. And I even wonder too when they rolled out the no more daylight savings announcement. I wonder if that was to try and grab the headlines away from the Musqueam thing. And I don't want to go too tinfoil hatty with it, but I just felt like that was very out of left field where nobody like none of this was cooking like that you hear in the headlines. It's not like the government's been thinking about this, consulting with states, because from what I understood is the reason why we haven't changed the time changes because we want the whole seaboard to follow suit, and all of a sudden they just throw this thing out. I'm like, okay, so everybody's talking about that but not the implications of these land claims, which is crazy.
Right, right.
That's a
EJ.
fantastic
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Norm.
that's a fantastic point. I mean, what's going to affect people first, the time change or the land claims? I mean, people are going to be talking about the time change more
They
often.
understand the time change.
My kids had their soccer tournaments. All the parents are talking about the time change.
Yeah.
So it was actually, if that's the case, that was very smart of them to do.
Well, I think it's because they don't understand the implications, right? Because there's so much uncertainty, there's secrecy around it, so nobody knows what is really happening. Like, is it going to be all of a sudden are our properties that were bought in fee simple that were you have the ownership rights to, are those now going to become leasehold? Or like they were freehold, now they're going to become leasehold. So all of a sudden, or is it going to be like a dual title situation? Like that's the thing we don't know, they don't know. But and the unfortunate part, just from what I understand of it, just listening to some other experts on this field, is that they're now leaving, like the government's not stepping into it or being transparent about it, and they're leaving up to the court system to determine this, which is kind of your last measure you want to make a decision on this, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, politicians can decide these issues, right? That's why people vote for them to go and make laws at the legislature or at in parliament. That's their role. Make lawmakers make laws.
Yeah,
And they just seem to they pussyfoot around this issue. It's walking on eggshells. Nobody wants to discuss it. And I think it's a shame. It's a shame.
it is.
EJ, you're in Richmond where this kind of all got kicked off. When it comes to something like this, would you advise a buyer? Like, how do you advise a buyer who's looking at property? I guess in the effect, let's say in the specific area and with the Cowichan, but even beyond the Cowichan now, let's say people are just asking you about the map we just pulled up.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think you obviously got to let them know kind of what's kind of happening and kind of have to advise them like, hey, this is kind of what's happening. This is kind of the new area that they're kind of looking into, the whole uncertainty of it all. And then in the end, they kind of have to make that kind of decision. Similar to kind of what Norm kind of said, a bunch of people already kind of know about this or they kind of see it on the news. And there's some people who definitely are like, I don't want to touch anything. I don't want anything to do with real estate. And then there's other people who be like, well, it is what it is. I own a place. I need to go move up. I've got an extra kid. Let's go and make that next step. But yeah, you just kind of have to kind of tell it like how it is. That I think the hard part right now is just the uncertainty of it all, right? We just don't know kind of what's happening. And as you guys kind of mentioned, the government's not really saying too much about it and kind of lying about things. So it's hard to advise when you don't really know what is going to be happening.
Okay, well, we'll leave it there. We'll leave it there. I think for people watching, if you really care about this issue, get in contact with your MLA or your MP now, and see if good luck getting them on the phone. But get in contact with them because I mean, this is an issue that could directly impact your property rights. Okay, what I want to, which is a massive thing. I mean, it's earthquake shattering importance. Okay, I want to move on to another topic, and that is Tyson. You brought this up just before we jumped on, and that is subject to sale offers. A lot of buyers are wanting to do that. Obviously, they want to sell their place first, make the offer second. Sorry, buy the place second. Maybe just talk us through a little bit what you're seeing and what's working and what's not.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're finding right now is with every offer out there, we're in a buyer's market, which means that most of the negotiating cards are in the favor of the buyer because we have more listings than we do have demand out there. And so it's a great time to be upsizing. If you're an upsizer, this is kind of a good market for that. First time home buyers are capitalizing on it. But where you're finding a lot of things going on right now is the subject to sale clause, which means that you can write an offer on another home, but it's to the subject, to the condition of your house selling, is basically how it works. And there's a whole bunch of factors that play into it. But now people think this is a bit of a safety blanket when it goes into it. But the one thing that I think a lot of buyers don't understand is the uh, just kind of the position it puts you in as a negotiator. Basically, I would say it's probably the weakest position you can have as a buyer in negotiating on a property because it's basically what I tell my clients, it's a promise ring, not an engagement ring that you're going to buy this other property. So it's basically saying, okay, if we can sell our house and we promise we will buy this house, but that's only if we can sell our house. And sounds good in theory, but the implications of it, and you guys can speak into this too, is usually a buyer will have to end up paying more for this property so that they will not get bumped from another buyer, because another buyer can come in and bump their offer. That's maybe a stronger offer that's not subject to sale. And so they have to pay more or get a higher accepted offer in order to not to entice the sellers to not bump them. Because let's say theoretically, a home's $1 million, a buyer comes in and subject to sale, they write 980 on the property. Whereas a other person comes in, another buyer comes in, they don't have to sell their place, their cash or their clean offer. They come in and they can probably get it for 950. And the seller will more likely take the 950 offer than a 980 because they know it's going to happen. So there's just a lot more risk and exposure to that. I don't know what your guys' thoughts are on subject to sale. I would love to hear it. And why it's probably not the best protection you have.
Well, EJ, what would you like? How much success have he had with subject to sale offers?
Yeah, and it's just a lot more kind of complicated. And as kind of Tyson mentioned, like, it all makes sense on why you'd want to do a subject to sale to have that safety net of somewhere to stay and have your own home just in case you don't get it. But there's just a lot of moving pieces. And the part is that you're kind of like in a rush to try to sell. And so you say you get an accepted offer in a property, like, okay, I got 30, 60 days or whatever it is to sell. You're kind of like the clock is ticking right after that accepted offer. And so say you kind of wanted to test the market a bit, and you don't really have that time to test the market. You really need to kind of price it sharp, sometimes even lower than the market value to try to make it happen. And then, as you guys kind of know, that bump clause where if another offer does come in, even though you have 30 to 60 days or whatnot to sell, that bump clause can come in any time. So it's definitely a lot harder. And like Tyson kind of mentioned, you almost kind of end up paying a bit more sometimes with that subject to sale offer because you end up selling a little bit less. And then sometimes to entice that seller, if they're willing to accept a subject to sale, they're going to want a good chunk of change for it instead of a regular offer that is not contingent to subject to sale.
So I have a question on that then, because the number one counter, or what will people say is, well, I don't want to be homeless. Like that's the risk because always I would say it puts you in a better negotiating position to sell your home first. And we're in a buyer's market where there's lots of inventory. Theoretically, there should be some out there. But Christian, how would you respond to that? Like, if they're like, "Oh, I don't want to be homeless," do you have some questions on or answers on how you can help somebody with that?
Okay, so they're wanting to make the buyers wanting to make a subject to sale offer, and they don't want to be homeless. That's why they want to
That's why.
include the
That's why they want to
subject.
go with subject to sale. Yeah.
Well, a couple of things. They have to have their home on the market for this to
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
Because if you make that offer, and now the listing agent's going to ask you a series of questions. He says, "Okay, great. What are you selling?" So,
Yeah.
well, we're not on the market yet. Not going to work.
Yeah.
If you're on the market, great. Now the listing agent's going to ask for the address. They're going to look up the property. They're going to make sure it's priced attractively because it has to be able to sell for you to be able to buy his client's listing. So you got to have two checks there. If those two checks are there, then I would be okay making a subject to sale offer on behalf of my clients. But if one of those is missing, it's going to be a tough sell. And what I would suggest, and I think the best thing you can do is really go for a long closing period,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Try and negotiate a three, maybe if you're lucky, you can get up to 4 month closing period. That's 120 days. That's going to buy you enough time to find you what you want. If you're out there with a buyer's agent two, three times a week, you're scouring the market, you're going to find something you like. You really will. I mean, Norm, how about yourself? Like how do you like to advise clients on this?
It all depends on the situation. I've had a number of downsizing clients looking around and having that exact same thing that they bring up. I mean, I don't want to be homeless. I understand that. It all depends on the situation. I mean, if it's a young family, two young kids, let's say twins, I mean, you don't want to be homeless. But having said that, I mean, every dollar probably counts. A young bachelor who can couch surf with friends, I mean, there's almost no risk there. So you might have to move some of your furniture twice. It's really not that big of a deal. So it really depends on the situation. Going along with what you were saying, Christian, it really does matter if the home is on the market or not, but also maybe it's not on the market, but maybe they have photos ready, listings ready, ready to go. It's a Sunday night that you're getting the offer in, and they're ready to list Monday morning at a super sharp price. It's going to be a fresh listing. That's actually not that bad of a subject to sale. So what's on the market a week? Hopefully they get an offer because it's priced so attractively. So it really does depend on the situation. But I mean, saying that you don't want to be homeless in this market, it is such a slow market. I have recently had two clients who are selling their one bedroom condo, moving toward a Langley or South Surrey townhouse. And because of all these incentives to buy new, they've opted for new. And, you call the presentation center, oh, this plan, well, yeah, we have five left and they're all ready to go, move in ready. I mean, what's the risk? If they're happy with any one of those five, don't put yourself at a disadvantage and write subject to sale. That by the time you sell, there's going to be three or four left.
Yeah,
Uh,
and that's a great point. Like what you're saying, Norm, we often ask our clients, say, "Hey, is there like four or five properties out there that you think would be a great fit for you right now?" And if that's the case, then I think you're going to be okay when it comes time when your place sells. That theoretically there should be properties like that. And then also what we do is we tend to say, "Hey, we can't predict the future, but we can look to the past." And looking in the same time frame that we're in right now, there is this many sales in the type of home that you're looking for. And so theoretically, we feel like there should be four or five homes that should be available on the market when it comes time for you to buy.
Yep. I do find downsizing clients very often want a very unique property, a larger balcony, rooftop deck, like something very unique that they're happy to live in, right? Because they spend so much time at home.
Mhm.
So I find some people, they do appreciate it.
You're right. You're right. It's true.
Yeah, well, I mean, one thing that is interesting with that kind of subject to sale is that you in this market, because it is kind of a down market, you just don't know what your property is going to end up selling for. So, you can come up with a list price based on, recent sales and whatnot, but in the end, it's kind of what buyers are willing to offer. So you can have a range that you can say, okay, it's probably going to sell over there, and hopefully it kind of sells on that kind of top end of that range. But traditionally in basically any other market, you sell first and then you buy because you know exactly how much money you have at the end of the day to buy your next place. And so, you may be able to lock down a property subject to sale and then be like, okay, everything's great. And then you go on the market. And then unfortunately, with the down market, you're not getting as much as you thought. And then everything kind of falls through. So it I feel that it's better to not do the subject to sale as long as, like Tyson mentioned, there are some properties out there that would work for you as as a buyer.
Okay. And from what you're saying too, guys, it sounds like subject to sale offers are going to cost the buyer a lot more money. Would you say
Mhm.
that's
Yeah.
true,
Yeah,
EJ?
you'd have to sell for less and then potentially buy for more than what you would if you're in the other situation.
Hmm.
Yeah, having said that, I think when I was kind of looking at subject to sale in this market, because there are less buyers out there and more sellers traditionally, a property that's been on the market for a while that's a fixer-upper, that could be a good subject to sale because
Yes.
it's sitting. No one's actually putting any offers on it. And if you could kind of lock down a good price on it, that could be a good time for a subject to sale because everybody's kind of looked at it already. Nobody's offering. But if you're expecting to get, a subject to sale with it's a new property that just hit the market, it's going to be really tough for that seller to accept a subject to sale so early on.
And I'm finding still if a property is if it's in this kind of market, if it's nicely renovated, it's in a great neighborhood, at least out here in the Fraser Valley, we're finding those properties are moving relatively quickly. And some have even hit multiple offers. Not going over list price, or some have, but the majority of them. But you're still competing with it because there are buyers out there who are looking for that right property, and when it comes up, then we had clients who lost out on a cute little property in Chilliwack. They were subject to sale, and the other offer was not, and that was the biggest difference between the two offers. That why they went with the other offer.
Mhm.
Guys, by the way, just as a reminder, I did not mention it at the beginning when we jumped on, but we're gonna have a deal of the week. That's what we're gonna end the show on. Each one of us has brought a listing that we think offers a tremendous value. So if you're still with us at this point, you may want to hang out to the end and catch our each one of our deal of the week listings out in available right now, guys. On this theme, just turning the page slightly, unrealistic clients and let's say overpriced listings. Does overpricing a property actually hurt the seller's final price? Norm, what are your thoughts?
I would say typically yes.
Why?
I find too often when listings get stale in this market, buyers know that, well, look at they couldn't sell for this price, they couldn't sell for that price. It's been on the market 120 days, and then the lowball offers start coming in. And you can't fool people anymore by canceling it and relisting it. If you do, it almost needs to be off the market for 2, 3 months plus. Just taking it off for 2, 3 weeks is not really going to do anything. So I find pricing it is very, very important. And I get a lot of clients now asking, well, can we try this price for the first 2 weeks? Sure, I mean, you're the owner of the home, you can do whatever you like, but keep in mind the first 2 weeks is when everybody sees you home. The buyers who are writing an offer that day, the buyers who just went out that weekend, the buyers who just started looking, and the buyers who, are just starting to look online before talking to a realtor and mortgage broker. Everybody's seeing your home in the first 2 weeks. Whereas once it's stale on the market and you cancel and relist, it's only the people that are, looking at MLS. You're really going to do a lot worse.
Mhm.
Tyson, if a seller wants to list a well above market value, what risks should they understand?
We are in a downturn market where if you look at the stats, things tend to be dropping anywhere from 0.5% to a full percent month over month, at least here in the Fraser Valley. And so if you price your place, certain percentage over market value, and then every time you go to reduce, well, you're chasing a falling knife is kind of the term they use in investing, where and I've even seen it where we've had clients right on a place where they had it overpriced initially. And I told my clients, I said, had they had priced this home that, they initially priced at 2.149, said, had they had priced it in a market value of, let's say, 1.95, then they would have sold at that. But now they're listed at 1.849 with no bites because the market in those 6 months has dropped significantly for them where they can't even get. So because of the strategy, they've lost over $100,000 that they would have had in their pocket had they followed that thing. So you got to kind of zoom out and look at the long game of that in a downturn market.
Mm.
How long, EJ, how long would you recommend they wait before they change the price to sellers?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it just really depends on the property type.
Yep.
Sometimes it's supply and demand in the neighborhood, so it kind of really depends. Typically, there's quite a bit of data that will come out within that first 3 to 4 weeks, and based on that, you can kind of have the conversation with the seller. I mean, kind of going back to what would you advise the seller? I think I always kind of give ranges based on this market. And even if it's slightly above that range or at the top of the range, then I'd say, okay, let's go give it a try and let them know. We should really look at the data within the first few weeks. But if it's, if they're out to lunch basically and it's never going to sell, I honestly kind of tell them, I'm saying, I'm sorry, I'm just not the realtor for you because by me putting that on the market, I'm not doing you any favors. It's just basically false hope. And it's going to be wasting your time of getting your place ready, having it all ready to go. I unfortunately won't be the right realtor for you in that situation. And oftentimes that, if they decide, we're not going to go with you, we'll go with someone else, then they kind of run into that same that scenario that I was kind of discussing.
Sure. Guys, and sort of tying into this is like in terms of the act, when your home is on the market and you're trying to get it sold, you're getting a certain amount of viewing requests per week, showings, you're doing a certain number of open houses. You can see by the traffic coming through the open house whether or not It's busy, right? If you got 10 people coming through on a Saturday versus nobody. In the old days, I used to say that about three showings a week told me that the price was it was priced right and we were going to get an offer pretty quick. These days, you don't know. Like sometimes you get one showing a month. Norm, just before we jumped on, you'd sent a number of questions over, especially one asking, do the number of showings matter anymore? Tyson, or what are you seeing in terms of the Fraser Valley? Like in terms of buyer interest, do the number of showings matter anymore?
Well, it's hard because it's a buyer's market with no buyers, it feels like. But it's they always say it only takes one buyer when it comes through it. But so I don't know if you're always seeing those properties with 20 buyers going through before you get an offer, but it's been pretty slow, pretty far and few between a little bit with showings. Um, yeah, so I don't know if there's some magic number or magic elixir with it. I think the biggest thing is, are you getting activity? Are you getting traction on a property? Is there people looking at it? If nobody's booking a showing, and if you're calling around to other agents in the area and they're getting showings, then that's probably a good indicator that there needs to be something that needs to be changed. But if nobody in the neighborhood's getting any showings, and you're not getting any showings, and I think that shows, okay, that's an indication of the market. So, yeah, I don't know if there's a special number of showings you need to get if that's what you're looking for, but yeah.
Norm.
Well, I brought up this question because from August till now, I've had two one bedrooms. I'm not going to specify, what more than that, but I've had two one bedroom listings where we've had one showing,
Oof.
but we sold them. Like it's been crickets. And I mean, one of them, my client thought, great, yeah, sure, I'll accept this offer before the open house, but does that mean we can entertain other offers at the open house? I said, well, this is a very down market. We're very lucky to have this offer, and we've got it accepted, and it's actually really a decent price. And they removed subjects, and on that one, I was about to cancel the open house. I was telling him, if we do the open house and the buyer comes through and it's crickets, there's nobody around, it's really not a good look. And I've actually canceled open houses before when we have accepted offers for that reason. Um, and another one too. One showing, no other phone calls, and that was the buyer that bought the house. And you have to be very careful what you say, because it's not a good look at all. But this is how slow the market is. There's
Yeah.
still showings happening and sales still, excuse me, still happen, but it's the showings are way down on some homes.
Yeah, I'm finding that too. I was talking to some contacts in who work in pre-sales, and they said that the number of visitors to the pre-sale centers is way, way down, but the quality is really good.
Mhm.
So instead of having 20 people coming through a weekend, they may have five, but they find the five coming through are all genuine, serious buyers. So in a different sort of way, this person was telling me that they really kind of like this because they know every person has got really wants to dive into the project, know the pros and cons, and is considering a real purchase. EJ,
It,
are you coming across the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, with the showings, it's obviously important to get showings. If you're getting three, four, five showings a week, you're, you know, basically a realtor has kind of looked through it and buyers have kind of looked through it. They said, hey, you know what, this is worth kind of viewing. But if you're a month in, 5 or 6 weeks in, and you're still getting those three or four or five showings and nothing's happening, then there's something wrong, right? There's something that they saw at the in the actual unit, the neighborhood, or the building. Something's wrong. So it's really important to kind of get that feedback from those showings to see, thanks for coming in. Why didn't you guys put in an offer, right? What were some of the good things? What were some of the not so good things? And, really taking some of that data and making an informed decision on how to move forward with that listing with the seller and having those conversations.
Sure. Guys, why don't we move on? I was going to ask you for some quick thoughts here on multiplexes, fourplexes. EJ, can you pull up that visual of the fourplex that is going in on the west side of Vancouver? And this is, I took a screenshot from a global news video where they're talking and interviewing residents who obviously don't like this, and they say it looks ugly and imposing and it destroys the character of the neighborhood. Um, this is going to be more common as we move forward because the current provincial government has imposed new zoning requirement. Basically, wants any detached lot to be rezoned to a 3 or 4 plex, or and a six, potentially a sixplex if it's close to a transit node or a transit SkyTrain station. Guys, what are your thoughts on these types of homes coming into the neighborhood? What kind of issues could you foresee with it, Norm?
I've had listings like this, and people come in, and the number one hesitation buyers have is down the road when repairs happen, how is it going to happen together? Because it's similar to a duplex. You know, they're non-conforming stratas. That's what we call them. They're not holding meetings. They don't have contingency reserve funds. They don't, some of them don't even really have much with regards to a bank account. They just pull the money together and pay the lawn cutter. So anytime a larger repair happens, people are a little bit worried, how do we ensure that happens and gets voted in and gets approved, and the next door neighbor isn't dragging their heels. I think in strata, safety is in numbers. You have a big complex, yeah. The biggest thing is making sure that it's not 50, 60%, or huge numbers of investors who just don't care and just want cash flow. But I find safety does happen in numbers, 2, 3, 4 units, 5 units. You're really at the mercy of your neighbors and how they vote. And it becomes pretty apparent.
Sure. Tyson, is this a topic of discussion in Langley?
Not as much out here. We don't have as much densification. Things are starting to densify more. What we have a lot of is townhouses and row homes is that are what are going in. But I was just thinking about it, and you guys maybe will speak to it more. But wasn't it in Burnaby where there was a four-story laneway house that was being built, and it just like it towered over everything else in the neighborhood, and so is it Burnaby that's revising? They're the first ones to come out with the whole multiplex zoning, but now are they not revising it so that it's not so gargantuan in these neighborhoods where you just see this massive behemoth of a laneway house of 4 stories or whatnot in a regular neighborhood?
Yeah, I saw that as well. I think, once the government kind of released all this and said, okay, everybody, this is kind of the new density thing that everybody can do. And then when they actually built it, the people were like, what the heck is
Holy
this? Like,
crap.
this is crazy. Like, it's when you look at the actual residential homes and then this gargantuous house that's, 3 stories high, and it's just a wall of things. They immediately, like, I wouldn't say immediately, but I think right after it was built, they've had so many complaints that Burnaby decided, you know what, we're just going to hold off. I don't know exactly where they're at right now, but it made enough and it was a big enough issue that they decided to kind of hold off on it, because it was, yeah, just such a
That's right.
huge eyesore.
Yeah, I see it right here. Yeah. In October 2025, Burnaby City Council approved changes to scale back the R1 zoning regulations to better align with the neighborhood character, although the core mandate to allow 3 to 6 units on single family lots remains in effect. So,
I see a couple of these not too far away from where I live. So I live in Burnaby, and so when I go out on a stroll here, I can see there's one of these homes, and I actually talked to the builder who's building it, and a very interesting guy. But when you look at it, I mean, it looks like a small tower. You
yeah,
got these homes, and you see it just doesn't fit in with the character of the neighborhood. It looks, in my opinion, it looks ugly. It's going to take away any views you might have. I think the other thing with the densification right now is I'm noticing they're building the house that closer to the street.
yeah,
So if you're the home next of on either side, you start to lose some sunlight there because this thing is just blocking you, right? It's 5 meters out further towards the street. So you're kind of looking half of your view there is looking a bit towards the wall now of the newer building. And I just think there's going to be some issues with regards to parking, right? All of a sudden, if you've got, 3, 4 more cars, and I think in many of these municipalities, they're not providing enough parking for all the owners. So where are they going to park? Well, they're going to park on the street, and so that's going to be more cars on the road, and it's just it's like when you're driving through pockets of East Van, it already feels congested in many areas. So I don't know. I don't know how much I personally don't like that. I would rather them redevelop, let's say, areas of Kingsway. Kingsway is there's still a lot of little one-story shops. I mean, why not densify a major road first? Um, you can put 4 or 6 story townhomes or even condos, right? With commercial at base, and you see a lot of this in Langley, right?
Yep.
Tyson,
Yep.
and then you'd have built units above it. I'd like to see more of that.
Mm.
The
Yeah.
missing middle, they call it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like mix zoning, right? With that, and I think that really helps with those shops out too when you have, condos above it or living spaces above it to service those businesses that are there. I think is great. Um, but yeah, I know it's interesting. I also I love what the government did roll out with the high transit areas where, within a certain high transit hub, they can build towers and they roll out. Then it goes to mid rise and then to kind of low rise. The one part where I think the challenge is where everything can be a multiplex. With that, I just don't think we're quite at that place yet with it. And even talking to clients, who they're older, they're looking to downsize now, but they want to sell their property and they bought it because it's a duplex lot. And they're like, this is great. We have more value than the neighbors in our neighborhood because our one lot is zoned for duplex. And I had to break the news to them and be like, sorry, now everybody can do it in your neighborhood. You can probably do a 4 or 6 plex on here, but no longer. And they were really taken aback by that
Mhm.
because they bought it 30 years ago thinking it was going to be good for duplex.
EJ, are you seeing any buyers pursue fourplex opportunities?
No, not at this time. I think kind of with the uncertainty in the economy and then the cost to even build kind of in the first place, the numbers just don't make any sense anymore, right? Like, in a hot market, definitely you have those kind of conversations, but in a slow market and the same cost, it's basically the same cost to build when it was a hot market. It doesn't make any sense at all. So I'm having basically zero kind of conversations and not more conversations, but you still have those conversations as kind of Tyson mentioned that, well, my lot is still worth more because I got a big lot and I can build the next buyer who kind of comes in can build, uh, you know, a duplex on this or, a fourplex or so on. And yeah, it's just not the case because other places, every other house can do the same thing basically, and no one wants to do it even right now.
Yeah.
Sure. Gentlemen, before we get into our deals of the week, any other topics that you wanted to touch on? Norm, you had sent in a few. What do you feel most passionate about from the list that you had on there?
I think it was really just that one. And then I'm also on Strata Council in a building in Burnaby. And we've had a lot of reoccurring issues about condensation on the inside of the windows. And then it freezes when it's super cold and just mold and humidity. And, is this a growing problem? Is this a problem because people just aren't looking up at how to maintain the right humidity in their home? Have you guys noticed it? And then is there a simple fix for it? So have you guys noticed mold or humidity in certain homes? Because I know it's pretty apparent when you're on strata council that it is an issue.
Well, I find it's more of an issue if it's an older home,
Yeah.
Mhm.
right? If it's a condo, it's older, 70s, 80s. So, you're looking at a 40, 45-year-old condo. And then if they haven't been turning on, like in the bathroom, and you know what, we've all been on an inspection with our buyers, and the inspector will always tell the buyers, keep that fan running when you're taking a shower. And even after you've taken the shower, keep it running for several hours so that you don't have too much condensation. And
Mhm.
it's the condensation over long periods of time, years, decades, it turns into mold. So not uncommon, I think, for older buildings. Like I've done inspections, and generally the inspector will say it's not a big issue in terms of treating it, right? And having someone come in or you just can do it yourself. But what are you finding? Like, what is it that are the tenants? What are the tenants? Is it tenants complaining? Is it landlords saying that the tenants aren't taking care of the home?
I have seen it also in newer buildings as well when people are running humidifiers. I guess if they're just doing too much humidity. So I have seen it in some new buildings, but again, it is a lot less common, that's for sure. I just find it's a very disputed topic. A lot of tenants think, no, landlord should be taking care of it. But it's really how people are living in their home. In the 90s, we used to have humidistats. People would set it and would know how to set it correctly, and it would turn the bathroom fan and exhaust all the humid air, and you get fresh air from, any cracks or crevices. So I think there are a few easy ways to prevent it from happening. Landowners, they don't want to take responsibility because they're saying, well, it's how the home is being lived in. It's the habits of the occupant. And I do see that, once people change the way they live in their home, the problem goes away.
Hmm.
Yeah. I think it's also there's also a degree of maintenance, right? Like the reason why when you own a home, one of the big things is that you're responsible for maintaining it. And that's one thing that I've been noticing a lot, and something I always advise my buyers is when you're looking for a home, especially an older home, look for one that's been cared for. There's a pride of ownership in it, or people have been maintaining it. Because if they've been maintaining kind of the basic things that you see, then it's more likely that they're maintaining the other things. Because you'll find there'll be little small negligent things like caulking. How many times does caulking come up in an inspection report and then a renegotiation on that? So just keeping up on some of those things, I think it goes miles and will save you a lot of heartache and headache and money in your pocket. Like it'll save you a lot of money when it comes time to whenever you have to sell.
Sure. Gentlemen, let's move to our deals of the week.
Go.
And this is the first time for us to try this segment. So if you've made it this far, we hope you find value in it. And EJ, if you want, you can pull up mine first, and I'll go first.
For sure. Okay, 1 second here. Okay. You wanna... Is this one yours there?
That is. Okay, so guys, this is a two bed, two baths. This is my deal of the week from New West. So this is you can see the address there, Quayside Drive. So Quayside it's right on the riverfront. Okay, it's in essence waterfront property. Now you don't have direct water views. I'll tell you what I like. I've been inside the home. I'll tell you what I like, and then maybe a couple of drawbacks. But um, what I liked is it's been nicely renovated. You can tell it's a homeowner renovation. Somebody did this for themselves to live and enjoy. If you can get to the kitchen and you just maybe you could stop on the kitchen, EJ, but just a really well done kitchen. It's house sized, and well, we'll just get to there and perfect. You can see it here. I just thought there's a lot of storage. They expanded it right to the sliding glass door. A lot of storage space. Great for cooking and uh, the space for the home. I think the listing had it a little over 12, around 1,200 square feet, which is huge for a condo. It's the size of some townhouses right now. 1,261 square feet. It's got great space. Master bedroom is huge, lots of storage, a couple of storage lockers as well. I mean, just huge. Maybe one, sorry, but just a good size. I just think there's a lot of value to it. This is move-in ready and just start living. They've also priced it really well. I've seen other listings comparable to this one in this same strata and in New West. They're generally listed about 50 to $70,000 higher than this one. The listing price here suggests to me these guys really want to get it sold and get it sold fast. It's not an aggressive ask. Um,
Hey, Christian, that's
the
the Tiffany Shores building too, right?
Correct,
Yeah.
correct. And then, so there's a sister building to this, Tiffany Shores, it's called, and they have done some work over the years. I think it's a better maintained strata than a lot of them. You'll see right smack in the middle of the screen, it says rain screen full. That's the biggest expense that you're going to face as a buyer is as a homeowner is having to rain screen the entire building. The windows were new, the glass sliding door was new, and obviously if they've done the rain screen, they've done the entire surroundings of it. So I think it's a good buy at this right around this price. given the market, you probably still negotiate some off of that. What I would say is two drawbacks. One, you do not have a direct water view. You've got a building there in front of you, but luckily, you're not facing towards the train tracks either. And the second one is the second bedroom does not have a direct outlook, so you're not getting that direct sun. It is obscured I mean, it's over the balcony, but it's not the best outlook. I mean, it make maybe a nice home office, but that would be the two drawbacks I'd say to it. But I think it's a good listing. And it's priced very well. EJ.
All right, so my deal of the week is this house in Richmond, kind of in Steveston over there. It's an interesting one because it is a foreclosure, so kind of gonna go over that a little bit. But it is kind of, if you kind of look at or you can't really see kind of the location over there, but it is kind of not a new house, but it's 2006, so it's not too old over there. It is fairly updated as well, kind of shows well. It's kind of tough because it is a foreclosure, so we don't really know for sure kind of what the full kind of condition is when you kind of look into it. But for the location being that close to the Fraser River over there, kind of right in Steveston, at 1.6, this is from based on my opinion, I think it's a pretty good deal. So,
EJ, what would homes like this normally go for?
I didn't kind of look over into the actual recent sales or whatnot, but I think, this one, depending on the actual condition on the inside of it, I know it looks good in the pictures over there, but I'm guessing probably at least into the 1.7, 1.8 range, maybe even a bit higher, depending on the condition over there. Um,
That makes sense to me because I saw a foreclosure with a client in North Surrey, and it was listed. I think it was like 1398, and or 1498, and it ended up going for 1.6. And
as a
this wasn't.
as a
Yeah,
foreclosure, is that what it was?
it
Yeah.
was, and went over 100,000 over the asking price in the court.
Yeah, and so that's the kind of the negative part about foreclosures is that how it kind of works is, once they kind of do have that accepted offer, they'll let you know what the accepted offer price is and the court date, and anybody can kind of show up to court. And then you kind of just wait and see how many people come to court and decide what you want to do. So that first person who has that accepted offer, they can leave their offer as is, but they probably won't get it because somebody else has kind of shown up. So it's back to the that bidding war of deciding how much do you really want to pay for this property. So if you get an accepted offer on this and it's no one else shows up in court, it's a great deal. If they get an accepted offer, now you got seven people in court. Now it's kind of a challenge to say what it will actually sell for.
Okay, Tyson.
Yeah. Let's go to 98 A Avenue. So I grew up in Walnut Grove, and this isn't in Walnut Grove. It's probably the most desirable neighborhood in Langley or the Fraser Valley, one of the hottest markets, I would say as well. But this one, listed by a fellow Oaklandite as well, is a 2,400 square foot home or so. And it's a 2,300 square foot home. And the fact that it's under 1.3, it's 1,289, is mind-boggling for me to think that. But that's just where we're at with the market. And I look at this, and this is a great home built 2018. It has a one-bedroom suite downstairs. And so when you look at that and going, man, for under 1.3, you can buy all of this house. The only downside of this, you are sharing a lot. But it's still you're at 5,000 square feet for your own property, and the it does back on. There are some train tracks back there, but to be able to move into Walnut Grove for around like something that has a one and a two is, I would say, a really good deal. Seeing how you're also looking at,
Tyson, can you explain by one and what one and two would
sorry,
mean?
1.2, like
Oh,
where
okay.
it's sorry, that's what I meant,
Okay.
is where you can get it for under 1.3. I just look at that, and I don't think we've seen prices like that in Walnut Grove, especially for a newer house like this, in a long time.
Mm.
What would this have gone for, let's say 3 or 4 years ago?
Oh, at least 1.5, 1.6, maybe. Probably 1.5, just to safely say. But there's a home listed across the street for 1.4. There's a home down the road. It's not on a shared lot, but it's on a I was just looking at it. I can't remember how big the lot is. Probably 7,000 square feet, but it sold for 1.8. And that's like literally 4 or 5 houses down. Yeah, it sold for 1.82.
Tyson,
And
in the first photo there, is that gray area there, is that a fence by the highway or the train tracks, or what is that there?
No, that's just the I was just looking on my Google Maps with that one so that is the gray area. Oh, over to the left there.
Yeah.
That is there is behind that, like that's Port Kells kind of close by.
Okay.
And so there are there's warehouses and other things
Yeah.
close in that neighborhood. But so it's kind of in the outskirts of Wanna Grove, but it gets you into Wanna Grove, into the schools,
Mhm.
into the neighborhood, and you're sitting at almost 1.3.
Especially when you factor in a newer townhouse,
Yeah,
which is going to be 900, no
yeah,
suite.
yeah.
Yeah, there's
No sweet.
GST incentives, right? But I mean, that's actually really not a bad deal at all.
Well, your bottom line, if you have the suite revenue going
Yeah.
in there and a one bedroom suite, I'm not a property manager, but I know it can go in a range of 1,400 to 1,600 at least, um, in that area.
Hmm.
You're probably paying less on your bottom line with that suite income coming in
Hmm.
versus a townhouse that's 1.1 or 1.2,
Yep.
or I mean a 900 or a million.
Hmm. Awesome.
Norm, take it away.
So, Christian, you were speaking about rain screening on the Tiffany Shores building, and that was done a while ago. It's a phenomenal complex. This one here, Penticton Street, this is Gardenia Village. So, EJ, maybe you can pull up the other photo there, or the yeah. I Googled how many times this has been in the news. So I advertise on REW. I get people inquiring on these amazing deals at Gardenia Village all the time. Well, they've had some massive, massive assessments. So I called the realtor, looked into it a little bit. They've had two huge assessments that have been passed. They're just about done. The first one was $70 million for this complex, and the second one was 15 million. So we're talking $85 million in assessments in this complex. We're talking everything from windows, balcony doors, balcony membranes, hot and cold water lines, sewer lines, just a ton of deferred maintenance. I believe roof as well. And in the smaller assessment, that was for hallway carpet, paint, lighting, perimeter drainage around the complex as well. I think they just added a bunch of work to it, to the scope of work. So originally they couldn't pass any of this leaky condo repairs because there's so many investors in there, and it was really hard to pass. So it went to Supreme Court of Canada, and they forced it through, and it passed. I think this is going to be very similar to 6455 Willingdon and 4165 Maywood in Burnaby, where they had did a $13 million project. The banks wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. You couldn't borrow a penny on it. So this may be a complex where you have to do all cash or have a home equity line of credit where you're paying for the property off your home equity line of credit. So it might not be suitable for everybody, but if somebody has bank of mom and dad, I mean, you can get into it two bed, two bath here in Vancouver, in a good area in Vancouver, for 550 list price. What you can still get it for, probably a little bit less. Yeah, it's not a perfect unit. You could renovate it, you could leave it. It's livable, but I mean, for that price and everything's going to be done. Again, I haven't read through all the documents, but it sounds like pretty much everything's going to be done in the complex. It really just comes down to interior of the home and what you want to upgrade there. So,
Norm,
really
Norm,
good.
this is the one that's on Broadway, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, but it's got the Penticton address.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
that
this
was a
unit is
smart
not
move by the
facing
developer.
Broadway, but some
What's
are.
that?
I wouldn't want to be facing Broadway, but I mean it's a
Yeah,
pretty complex.
yeah. It's a huge complex, and yeah, no, I know for years I would drive down Broadway and I would see this thing under scaffolding,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and you just couldn't, and anytime a buyer would see one of these listings online, they'd say, "Wow, look how cheap this is," and you'd call them and you'd have to go over the fact that this
Mm.
thing, you have to be an all cash buyer, and then you got to come up with 100 grand or more to do the rain screening on it. So
Well, for a two-bedroom unit in here, we're looking at between 200 and $250,000 worth of assessments that they've paid for. So
Wow.
these are huge amounts that they've had to pay. So factor that into the price. I mean, you're getting $200,000, over $200,000 worth of work done on your unit alone.
are they done all of it now?
They're pretty close. Estimated completion is around June, I think he was saying. So it's coming up to just about completed. So even if an investor wanted to, I mean, I wouldn't say to flip it, but if you want to be able to get a mortgage on it fairly soon, you could pay cash now, wait a few months. Once the rubber stamp of approval is done, that it's all completed, banks will lend on it after that. So, you should be able to get a mortgage on it come summertime.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go. Well, good luck. Great to hear that the residents finally have all that work done. That all of those years that they were in the middle of doing it and not doing it and doing it again. So done.
Mhm.
Okay, gentlemen, I think we're coming up to the end of the hour, the top of the hour. I think we want to leave it there. Anybody else want to leave with any closing thoughts? That looks like a no.
I would just say
So, well,
trust your realtor and their strategy if they come with recommendations on things, especially when the subject to sale thing goes out. Is they're there to help advise you and set you up in the best place possible and best position possible. And so, um, yeah,
okay,
Tyson, I gotta
Norm.
agree with you. A lot of people tend to think realtors are in it for the money, and while that may be true for some of it, what you just said is incredibly true. A realtor doesn't get, 80 reviews, 100 reviews that are good reviews by screwing over their clients. I mean, putting clients' interest ahead of theirs, and then having clients who, give reviews that are 5 stars, that does prove that, exactly what you just said is true.
yeah, we and I can attest for all four of us here. We want to keep you for life as a client, and so we do not want to just pull any sort of fast thing on you. That's not our in our DNA or MO or anything like that. But we want to try and help you. We do this a lot more than the average person does, and so um, yeah, that's what I would say is we care.
Well said, EJ. Any final thoughts?
Nope.
Okay. Well, I will leave it with a final thought, and that is again, pay attention to this land claims issue.
Yeah,
It's not helping our economy at all. And you can contact your MLA, you can write your MLA, Google them and get in contact, but also your federal member of parliament, same thing. Find out what's going on here because we really need to have some clarity on this and have this put to rest at some point. The last thing we need right now is to have so much uncertainty. So contact your MLA, contact your MP, write them, call them, leave a message. For all of you for joining us, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Guys, thanks for being here.